Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this great event. We're here to talk about the new AirMiners Launchpad program. I'm joined by Nikki Batchelor from XPRIZE, the director of the new XPRIZE Carbon Removal, and Paul Cubbon from Creative Destruction Lab. Great to be here with you today. The purpose of today is we wanted to host a kind of a Q&A session for teams and help teams get familiar with the AirMiners Launchpad, with the upcoming XPRIZE, with Creative Destruction Labs. We had a ton of questions submitted from people as everybody signed up for this event through Eventbrite. So we'll be answering some of those in kind of our initial some slides that we have put together, and then as well about 20 minutes or so in, Jason is going to be helping curate the Q&A in the chat. So if you have questions, please hop on the chat for that. And we're off. So I will let me just share my screen to kick off some basic remarks about some of the questions that came in that were regarding Launchpad in particular. There we go. How's that? I'm going to assume it looks good. As Marcus said during keynote, I'm going to assume this is working unless somebody yells at me. Good. So this is just some remarks of some of the questions that came in from all of you during the sign up for this event. So overall, really good stuff. I wanted to start with a little bit about why we created Launchpad, just for context. But who's Launchpad for? What's the design? Who are the prospective people that should be joining the Launchpad? How does the program work? Weekly agenda, and then kind of some thoughts for applications. So overall, why did we create the AirMiners Launchpad? Why are we here to help support early stage teams in carbon removal? The answer is quite simple. We need to remove gigatons of carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere. We don't know how to do that right now. The solutions that exist aren't at the scale they need to, and therefore there's this gap where early stage ideas and solutions need to be supported and accelerated so that they can get to gigaton scale. And so ultimately, kind of our value with building Launchpad was for it to be kind of like water. We ultimately wanted to figure out how do we support teams rather than to try and build something and then go out and see if anybody needs it. So again, that's where having all of your questions and comments has been super helpful, and really thanks to so many people who interviewed with us and gave comments throughout the AirMiners Launchpad development. So okay, so who's Launchpad for? There's a lot of people ask, is it for me? Am I a good fit for Launchpad and whatnot? So overall, we've seen lots of applications come in. I think people in general kind of who have applied at least kind of get the idea. So it's not if you've submitted an application, it's not that you didn't get it right or anything. It's just more people are asking. So overall, it's that it's for people that are already working on an idea. So if you're pre-idea, if you're saying, I've got kind of, I'm interested in working on this field, but I'm not sure in what area yet, that's probably a bit too early for Launchpad. And you can connect with other parts of the AirMiners community. For example, the problem pack groups that John Sanchez puts together. Those are really good for moving people from kind of I'm interested in working on something to actually working on something. But at the point where you have an idea forward, that's where we really like to be able to support early teams in Launchpad. So maybe you've got your idea, maybe you've got a team, maybe you're by yourself. That's either way is fine. We've seen about half of the applicants so far are people that have a team. That means two co-founders or more. But we also see the other half is for solo founders. I would say we probably can help most with people with a technical background. That said, for this batch and for all the other batches, we are accepting and working with people that have a stronger business background but don't yet have a technical co-founder or something like that. But again, sort of to that point of the clearer you have the idea, the more that the Launchpad is a good place for you. And I just listed some of the topics that we're going to be helping with: tech road mapping, business thinking, team building, networking, connections through the AirMiners network. And I thought this quote from Aaron Fitzgerald was really good, just around kind of the spirit of the type of person that's gonna succeed in Launchpad, and that we can really help. And he said, as my team expands, we haven't found a TE expert. If I could get that skill, that would be phenomenal. I think the emoji also speaks to this kind of like, hey, yeah, like we need to get to the point where we're removing gigatons of carbon dioxide. This is the piece I need to make that happen. No big deal. Like we'll get that. We'll help you get connected there, and you'll be off. And just in summary, some of the values that we have for Launchpad, like I mentioned, are be like water, which is, as a team, we're not trying to create anything that's not needed. As a team, what we're doing is how do we help to accelerate 1,000 shots on goal for carbon removal. So whatever type of support that means and that requires, that's the type of things that we're going to be working on for Launchpad. Also, being collaborative, doing the work. We can help with introductions and giving you the right people to talk to and connect with. But ultimately, it does come down to you actually have to make it happen. So so program overview. How do we doing that in this first batch? These are some of the topics that we're working on: technology capabilities, tech development plan, assessing potential for carbon removal. That's actually where we have Grant Faber from the Global CO2 Initiative is going to help lead a workshop on TEA assessments, and so that'll be good there. Finding co-founders and first hires, customer discovery, value proposition. And then finally, connecting to the broader ecosystem. I think a lot of founders tend to think that money and investment is kind of the key resource. It is a key resource, but building your team, finding a co-founder at those early stages, those are kind of impacts that are even greater than the dollar value of them. The timeline: it's a 6-week program. So we're meeting with this first batch every Tuesday at noon for about an hour, all over Zoom. So it's not an in-person program. So it's June 1st, and the last one goes through July 6th. And just a few notes on applications. People were wondering about, what makes a good application, or what do we see that we like. Definitely more diverse teams are better, whether that's your technical background, but more importantly, your gender background, your geographic background. We're looking for teams that are really kind of built in a way that's more resilient. We think that this is an important part of what is going to make a team that succeeds to be able to pull carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, being able to come from a diversity of interests and backgrounds, and be able to kind of chart a course towards what does the planet look like when we're removing gigatons of carbon from the air. Another question that came up was around NDAs. Just kind of what's Launchpad's approach to if you have something super secretive that you don't want to share. Just kind of a blanket kind of approach to that is, we can work with you, just kind of not sharing stuff, like basically share a minimum amount. It's probably not optimal. In general, just kind of not a huge fan of the NDA approach. I think especially at the early stage of a company, I do meet founders occasionally who are like, hey, I have this idea, it's super secret. I think if somebody else heard about it, they would copy it and steal it. In general, and it's not an absolute, but in general, I think that's not the best approach. But if it was something that you absolutely needed we could figure out some way to work with you for Launchpad. Finally, the applications close on May 25th at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard, and the way we're doing it is just the applications would immediately open again for batch 2. So if you're like, rushing for batch 1 and you decide to submit a couple hours late, like, good, you're in for batch 2. And so with that, those are my notes for Launchpad. Just respond to some of the questions that came in. So thank you again for everybody who submitted questions as well. And if you have any other questions, please throw them in the chat, and Jason's going to be helping moderate those in a bit. But next up, I wanted to welcome Nikki Batchelor, the director of the XPRIZE Carbon Removal, and she's going to share some information from the XPRIZE.
Thanks, Tito. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here today. I'm just going to pull up my slides as well. Give me 1 second. Okay, loading. Great. Thanks for the thumbs up. So I just want to give you a really quick overview of what XPRIZE is for those of you who are not familiar, and then a little bit of a deep dive into what the carbon removal XPRIZE is all about. And, we're really excited to be partnering with AirMiners Launchpad because I think it's a great kind of funnel that we're trying to create to bring new, interesting ideas and teams and companies into the world to tackle this huge problem of carbon removal. So, it's a really nice fit from our side, and we're excited to be participating in this first cohort, and there's a lot of alignment here. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands, beyond the actual program, the 6-week cohort that's getting started here, there is a big opportunity for funding by competing in the XPRIZE carbon removal. So we just want to make sure that's clear to everyone, and that incentive is lying out there as kind of a next step to keep building your teams, building your ideas, and your technologies ultimately over the next 4 years. So let me just start at the top here. So quickly, XPRIZE is a foundation. We're based in Los Angeles, although, mostly virtual these days. And we run large incentive prize competitions. This is just a quick background by the numbers of all of the kind of prize purses that we have given out over the years. We've launched over 25 prizes now and awarded 17. We just wrapped up with the NRG COSIA Carbon XPRIZE, which some of you might have seen, and gave out the remaining checks. So all that $20 million is out the door now. So we're excited to kind of move forward with, the new carbon removal prize on the plate, and take a lot of the lessons we've learned from running these other prizes, not just on carbon and environment. We also work across exploration and human equity domains. These are kind of how we think about the work at XPRIZE, and just a few examples of some of the other prizes that we have been running for background. But let's dig into what we're all excited about right now. So the XPRIZE Carbon Removal is a $100 million competition around bringing new innovative carbon removal solutions into the market and accelerating the technology development for those already underway. So just at a high level, it's a 4-year competition. We are giving out money at several different critical stages. So you can see a few different milestones here on the timeline. It's really important. We're trying to get the word out that we are giving away $20 million this year. That is a lot of money. We're really excited to get it out the door, and we want to use that as an incentive for teams to really start forming quickly and start working right away. I think sometimes with programs, it takes a while to get money out the door, especially with the prize model. People assume that all of the money comes at the end, and we want to make sure that we are fueling the ideas and helping to fund some of the critical work that needs to go into building the demonstrations. So, you'll see the first milestone here is $5 million related to student awards. I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation, just so it's clear, what is required to be considered a student team and what the opportunities for funding are there. And then the next real milestone here is April 2022. So next Earth Day, we will be giving out $15 million to the top 15 teams at that point in time. The prize has an interesting structure where you can continue competing over the 4 years. You don't have to get in at the very beginning. You don't have to create your team this year, and you don't have to win a milestone award to be eligible for the $80 million remaining at the end of 4 years. But why not try for it? Because that money is on the table, and it will go a long way with kind of building the ambitious demonstrations that we're looking for here. Just at a high level, the objectives that we are really going after here with the competition, ultimately, we're trying to increase the supply of cost-effective, durable carbon removal solutions. That is the top line goal for us. It's really what the competition is trying to achieve in the world. You know, kind of beyond that, what XPRIZE really brings to the table is really around measurement and verification and proving the technical viability of new technologies and solutions. And so that will be a big part of our program over the next 4 years. And my colleague, Mike Leach, is on today to kind of help with some of the technical questions that might come up. He's the technical lead for our prize. He also managed all of the verification work and really the whole field testing operation for our last Carbon XPRIZE. And so has a lot of experience in this area and is a great resource to kind of ask questions to today. And then, you know, beyond that, we're really looking at, you know, what is the sustainability and equity angle for the deployment of carbon removal solutions, and inspiring this next generation of talent and innovators on this topic in this space, which is why we have the special carve out for the student awards. So just let's talk about the solutions for a moment. So we have kind of left this prize intentionally very wide open in terms of the different carbon removal pathways that are eligible to compete. You'll see that we've covered air, ocean, land, rocks here. We're open to hybrid solutions, interesting new ideas that are not like explicitly written on this screen right now. I think the most important thing is really that we need to be able to measure the carbon being removed in your solution, and it has to be negative, and it needs to be durable and sequestered. There are way more details in the fine print of the guidelines, which are out now for public consumption. If you haven't seen the prize guidelines, you can download those on our website. And it goes into detail around what will be required for the demonstrations and the evaluation criteria. So today I'm just trying to give you the top line kind of information there. So just so it's clear to everyone, when we are talking about competing in an XPRIZE, we're talking about building a real physical demonstration that works and removes carbon dioxide. It can't just be an idea. This is not an ideas competition. I think sometimes we get folks who come to us with crazy ideas that we love, but you know, they're not really in a position to execute building out the full demonstration. And that's really what sets XPRIZE apart. That's what we are really trying to push for over the next 4 years. So you have to build and run a working demonstration at the scale of 1,000 tons removed per year. Then, in addition to that, we will be looking at the fully considered cost of that removal, and we are going to be issuing some guidance on what kind of cost modeling we would like to see, but we'd like to see what those projections are at the megaton scale. But ultimately, we're here to make the large impact that we all know needs to be made. So you need to be able to make a case for what it looks like to scale sustainably to the gigaton scale over time. You don't have to be at the gigaton scale during the competition, but we need to see the plan, and we need to understand what the assumptions are behind that. And our expert judging panel will be looking at all of that in great detail. And so we'll be issuing kind of more guidance on this as the submission requirements come out later this year. But just to put this next slide up, there's a little bit more detail on all of the categories here. I'm not going to dwell too much on this. If people have questions, we can kind of dig into that on the Q&A section. But, you know, just to note, like when we say sustainably scalable, these are the different things that we're looking at. It has to be durable, has to be net negative. You need to factor in what kinds of global limiters are in place for the different types of carbon removal solutions you're looking at. And we want to understand how you plan to engage with local communities and what is the environmental justice angle of a long-term scale-up plan of this kind of solution. What will the impact be, and how do you plan to work with your, local siting requirements for the future? So let's just dig into the student details for 1 second. So it's clear what's on the table for everyone immediately. The current deadline for the student award submissions is October 1st of this year. So it's right around the corner. And something interesting to keep in mind here, we have an additional pool of money available for students who have interesting measurement, verification, reporting technologies that will be helpful for carbon removal. So in general, this competition is really looking for the big carbon removal solutions, the moonshots in this space. But we know that there is work to be done on a lot of the monitoring technologies, especially around ocean CDR and soil monitoring. So we have kind of put aside a small pot of money, awards up to 100,000 per team for students who are working in this space. So if you have ideas or know other people, please spread the word about that. And then the $3 million of the $5 million is available for teams who are planning to compete in the full 4-year competition. And that will have all of the same requirements as everything we we're just talking about. But we're just trying to give a little boost to the student run teams to kind of give them a leg up with their initial conceptual development and early stage technology design. You can see a little bit more detail here in terms of some of the analytical and measurement tools that we were talking about: soil GHG monitoring, oceans, life cycle analysis tools, TEA. I mean, there are many needs in this space, and all of these pieces are going to be important in building the infrastructure that's really required to scale carbon removal and to be able to all look at the progress and impact of solutions in a consistent way. And then I just want to spend 1 second talking about the eligibility of the student awards. So just to be clear, when we talk about student teams, we're looking for teams that are comprised of more than 50% students, and they would be led by a student team leader. So you can have a few team members that are not actively students participating on that team. We consider a student in a broad sense of 35 and younger and being enrolled in an academic institution. We're even allowing folks who just graduated this last semester to participate in those as well. We know it's been a rough year for students, and a lot of them will, just be coming out of their programs with great ideas. We want them to be eligible for that as well. And then you'll be expected to look for some sort of academic advisor. So you don't have to enroll officially through your university. You can be planning to spin out your own business. Whatever you want to do on that side of things is fine. But we would like to have some sort of letter of support from the academic institution or the advisor that you're working with. I think we're almost done here with the slides. This one is really just a recap of the timeline that we're talking about and kind of the approach. So October 1st, student awards, we talked about that. February of next year is the deadline for the full team submission. And then the money, the 15 million that we talked about, will be given out Earth Day. So we have a 2-month or so period to do all of the judging and reviews and make the selections for those teams that'll be receiving that money. And then for folks that decide to continue competing in the competition, you will have about 2 years to build your technology, your solution, whatever it is that you're working on. And then ultimately, you're going to have to apply for a site visit. This is related to the measurement and verification work that I mentioned earlier, but XPRIZE will be visiting your actual physical site, wherever that is in the world, and doing a full measurement and verification review of your solution with probably third-party contractors that we'll be working with. And all of that information will go to the judges and will be reviewed after the site visits are complete. There are a limited number of site visits. So this is almost like getting into the finals. If you qualify for a site visit, you're in the home stretch. And then of the cohort that gets selected for site visits, we will select the grand prize winners from that. So I think we just have one more recap on deadlines. I'll leave this up for a second for anyone to see, but I'm happy to share these slides, and Tito can make them available for anyone later as well. All right, back to you, Tito.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikki. And I saw tons of questions coming up in the chat. I see Mike is also on top of it, and tons of questions about Launchpad. So I wanted to invite up Jason to help us moderate all this. But yeah, just everybody who's asking questions in the chat, this is really great. Keep it up. We're just going to dive in.
Great. So first question from Francesca F. Is maybe for Paul. Could you speak to more why the NDA approach is less preferable? Why does it make that less appealing? Any advice on how to navigate that as a team?
Yeah, sure. I'll give my point of view on it, and you know, kind of caveat: I'm not a lawyer, and the founders should always make their own informed decisions. But I think that a lot of the help you can get from early stage programs like Launchpad don't require you to reveal the detailed specifics of what you're doing, your learning process, right? And so I think, you know, just as when you go to raise your initial funding round, you'll have a non-confidential deck. You can, very, very rarely is the intellectual property in the idea, it's in how you're going to solve the problem, right? And so early on, you need all the help you can get. And I would just say, be really clear about what you need to keep secret, because the more secretive you are, the harder it is for people to help you. That said, get your legal advice and work out the kind of the 5% that you need to put in a box.
Okay.
Thanks, I like that.
Great. Couple of questions on notifications and timing. One from Darius Stoltz, one from Tim Sperry. If I applied, should I have gotten an email? And when does AirMiners select and notify teams for batch 1?
I can take that one. So we are just full straightforward answer would be the latest that you should expect to get an answer would be the day after applications close. So close on May 25th. The latest you would hear from us would be May 26th for batch 1. That said, we've been doing it on a rolling basis. So we've already actually written some people, invited them to be a part of Launchpad, but there's been a ton of applications, so we're still catching up on that. So just because you haven't heard anything, we did get your application. There is a success page, like when you hit submit, it does say like you did this. So there's a confirmation there, and so yeah, be on the lookout for an email no later than May 26th.
As a kind of a follow-on to that, question is also, do you see benefits to joining batch 1 versus batch 2 versus batch 3? What are the trade-offs in joining sooner rather than later?
Yeah, so batch 1 is it's the first time that we're doing this program. I think one of the benefits is you can get in early, given some of the timelines and deadlines, especially with XPRIZE and Creative Destruction Lab. I think getting a start sooner rather than later is better. The batch 2 that we'd be starting is we're going to do it every quarter, so it'd be in September. So if you're that's the benefit, is you get to start 3 months earlier. The downside is it's going to be the first time that we're running this, so it's going to be very much an experiment, and we ask that people are. I think we put this on the FAQ in some sort of fun language, but like, work with us. Ultimately, going back to this idea of being like water, we want to support teams where they need to be supported. And as we iterate on this over the next every quarter for the next several years, we're gonna get better at that. I figured, Paul, do you potentially have some other thoughts to add there?
Yeah, I do. The best time to plant a 50-year-old tree is 50 years ago. The second best time is today. But more seriously, then, you think about a long timeline that is needed for kind of a lot of these things. I would just say, get going if you're ready to get going. I think it's easy for people to rationalize delay, and good and fast beats perfect and slow here. Because perfect and the only thing, what's the saying that Mike Tyson is often quoted on saying? Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And so the thing is for the founder, right? It's only when you actually try to do something kind of that gets you out of your computer and out of your own head. And I know many of you are, I'm not trying to kind of insult anybody, but it's only when you actually go and try and get kind of validation of what you're doing with potential customers, checking the tech works, that you'll end up pivoting, right? And you'll pivot a bunch of times. And I know the term's overused, but you need to find those pivots early so that you can actually then get traction and into your plan. And this is the start. You know, we're trying to avoid you having to get punched too often.
That's right. Well said. And I can't think of, there was somebody who did decide to apply to batch 2, and I thought, okay, that's a good reason. They didn't have their idea figured out, and so that's, you know, that's a great reason to, again, to apply when you're ready. But we've set them up to be quarterly to try to meet people right at that moment when they're right at that sweet spot. Yeah, nice question. Thank you. And keep the questions coming. I see there's 9 new ones according to Zoom, so great.
Yeah, it's great. This one is tailored maybe a little bit more for Nikki and Paul. How closely will the AirMiners Launchpad curriculum team activities involve XPRIZE during the 6 weeks of training? How tailored is it to the Gigaton prize?
I can kick it off to start at least, but just in the sense that, you know, XPRIZE is announcing guidelines and more specifications, but even from what you've seen already, this kind of approach where it's like this has to be net negative. For example, the work that we're working on with Grant from the Global CO2 Initiative, right? It's getting that sort of techno-economic assessment thinking and templating done at the earliest stages, and so at least, yeah, and, you know, continue to do that as the guidelines emerge.
Okay, great.
Let's say, Nikki, do you want to go? Or I mean, I've got a comment, but do you want to jump in?
Go for it, Paul.
Okay. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think there are going to be some of you on the call, hopefully, that can go straight into kind of being competitive for the initial XPRIZE kind of student prizes and the first grants that Nikki mentioned earlier today, and you're ready to go, right? And maybe you're here for curiosity. There'll be others that kind of Launchpad will be really helpful to, and then maybe you can go straight through. And then there'll be others still that will kind of need some help after Launchpad before they can compete either for the initial year of XPRIZE kind of grants or the kind of the big prizes in 4 years' time. And so I think that's where hopefully Creative Destruction Lab can help. And whether it's Creative Destruction Lab or another accelerator program, there are stepping stones for you between Launchpad through to XPRIZE. And again, there are different combinations that will be appropriate for, and a good fit for different ventures. And I think it's recognizing there are different resources to plug in. You shouldn't become an accelerator hopper. I mean, the end goal is to actually create a business that has a big impact. But often more than one support program is helpful. So that's how I would play it out. And I don't know, again, if Tito or Nikki have anything that they want to kind of add to that.
Seems good.
Add one point that I think is something for us that makes this partnership really valuable. XPRIZE, oftentimes people think that we are our own accelerator and provide kind of that support to teams over the course of participating in the prize. And I think, there is definitely a lot of engagement that we have with the teams, and we try and organize a lot of kind of supporting efforts and partnerships and opportunities for teams throughout that period of time. But we are not like a traditional incubator or accelerator where we're providing a year-long curriculum of programming that is going to help you think through your customer discovery and find your co-founders and all of the pieces that Tito was explaining earlier. So it's definitely something that we highly encourage all of the teams to participate in, because ultimately we're judging the physical demonstration and how well the technology works, or how effective the solution is at removing carbon dioxide. But teams are going to need to raise money themselves along the way to compete. They're going to need to build successful businesses and have longer term plans, and all of that goes beyond the actual technology development itself. And so we encourage people to, participate in other programs like this so that they can really think through what is the business plan, how are you going to grow and scale and get to these targets. So I think in that way, everything is very complementary, and, we'll be in close contact over the next few years about how folks can, really think about taking the next step as they come out of each program. Not everybody that comes out of Launchpad will be ready to compete in the XPRIZE right away, but maybe in a couple of years you'll have made such progress you can still get in to compete for the grand prize. So don't let it deter you if you're not ready this year or you're just getting started. Participate in as many of these programs as possible, as well as the rest of the Creative Destruction Labs programming, and look for other opportunities for funding to get your idea off the ground.
Great. Can do a question from Jamal and Zanilov. Would technologies that prevent GHGs from being released into the atmosphere to begin with be considered as well?
Is that for XPRIZE or for Launchpad? Maybe both.
Yeah, it's
both, yeah.
unclear, but he asked it, I believe, during Tito's Launchpad portion. But
and what was the question? It was, do they prevent?
Yeah, would technologies that prevent GHGs from being released into the atmosphere to begin with be considered as well? And unclear if that was for Launchpad or for XPRIZE. Jamal, if you're
okay, I can share how we think about it from a Launchpad perspective, which is kind of taking a long-term view, but ultimately what we're working on is how to pull carbon dioxide, excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So if you have a process that's able to pull carbon dioxide from somewhere else, but ultimately down the road could be potentially applied to pulling carbon from the ambient air, game on. That's kind of the thesis that we're approaching this with, is that some things they start maybe for a different use or a different application, but ultimately if they can be translated later to ambient air, that works.
Great. Alicia Fredrickson has a few questions, actually. How many people do you anticipate will participate in batch one? To what extent is the batch component an important part of the program model, for example, versus being more of a series of weekly workshops? Will there be any ongoing support programming outside of the weekly calls and associated pre-work? Lots of questions to unpack there.
Sweet, solid. I'm going to send that one to Paul. I can take a stab at it to start. How many people?
Yeah,
we're anticipating. Okay, so just to hit it, how many people do you anticipate will participate in Launchpad's batch one? So on the people, since you said people specifically, we're basically the full team should participate. So if a team has 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, we expect the full team participates. On the how many teams are we looking to participate in the first batch? It's going to be 10 to 15 teams for this first batch, this first pilot. Ultimately, see Launchpad being able to grow to support more teams, but for that first batch, that's the number of people. Batch component, important part of the program model, series of weekly workshops. Okay, I think this is a question about kind of what's the engagement model, right? So overall, we see the weekly sessions are kind of the tip of the iceberg, in the sense that we're bringing people together, we're sharing some inspirations, sharing some materials, but ultimately so much of the work is going to happen in between sessions, and that's going to be on the team working together, the team collaborating with others. Yeah, Paul.
I'll add in. Yeah, look, I mean, there's no shortcuts here. I think everybody's here because they're passionate and they know that they've got to roll their sleeves up and do a whole bunch of work. And so the point about Launchpad meeting, for 1 hour a week for 6 weeks, it's not pretending that in 6 hours you can kind of move the dial significantly on this big goal. And so it's the connective tissue in the very first phase, right? And to give you kind of direction, feedback, and some resources, at the end of 6 weeks will help you to have a better plan for the following 3 to 6 months, than you have when you come in. And I say a better one than when you come in, because some of you will come in with nothing except an idea, and some of you may come in with your initial plan. So we're going to try to give you some guidance about how you can kind of go forward. But I can tell you, without wanting to intimidate everybody, I can tell you in less ambitious things than carbon removal, right? In running dozens and dozens of startup kind of programs that typically running on a 5 or to 10 week basis. I run them where people have to do 10 customer discovery interviews a week to stay in the program, because the premise is if you didn't do the interviews, then you're just living in your own head and your own imagination. Now, that's not going to be the basis of a launchpad, don't worry, but it will be one of these, you get out of it as much as you put in. And if at the end of it, you're left kind of trying to defend what you came in with at the start, then you're probably not taking advantage of the learning and the tools. So, you're going to have to get out of the building, as Steve Blank likes to say, and kind of see how your idea kind of is received with different stakeholders, so that you can refine what it is that you actually build. So yeah, this is the connecting tissue. We're keeping it lean so you can spend most of your time focusing on what you need to do yourself rather than listening to content. You all read lots, that's how we're gonna try and do it.
Great. And Yagos, you've been very patient with your hand raised.
Yeah, and kind of some of my questions got answered, at least to an extent. Yeah, I apologize, I joined late. So we have a team looking at ocean CDR-based solution, and we're thinking of potential CDL application. So I would like to get your feedback on, so I probably missed it, where does Launchpad sits in relation to the CDL, whether it's before or after, and also specifically for Launchpad, if we apply and if we get in, what level of technology disclosure is expected from the teams in the program?
Shall I start, Tito, and then you can pick it up?
Yeah, great.
So look, really, in brief, as Tito said, there'll be a quarterly start to Launchpad. So there'll be a new cohort that comes in kind of every quarter, whereas Creative Destruction Lab has an annual intake, that comes in the fall. So Creative Destruction Lab would happen for people after Launchpad typically, and so in really simple terms, think of the sweet spot for Creative Destruction Lab as being a technology readiness level of 4 or 5, and maybe some 3, and with Launchpad we're anticipating mostly it's going to be 1, 2, even 0, and so that's how I would link it there. What I'll do is, I think both Nikki and Tito have talked to the kind of the benefits of us collaborating and coming together here, and I think one of the benefits is we're going to try to kind of cross collaborate on in directing everybody to be able to apply to XPRIZE now, because then you're registered and you can kind of get the benefits of everything XPRIZE does. Apply to Launchpad so that you can kind of do that, and then where it makes sense also to CDL. Now, not everybody's going to use everything all the time. What I will do, just so that I can pass the baton on here, is I'll put my email address just directly into the chat. And if there's anything else about CDL, just connect with us. But basically, we're trying to take the friction out of things and connect in the background.
Nice, and I can just answer the kind of technology disclosure part. I think we touched on that already, but just to your specific question, I think it's to Paul's point, there's a lot that we can work on without you disclosing things, but also just kind of know where that box is of things that you are protecting, and be aware that box doesn't become everything, because otherwise it's impossible to interface with you. So that's it on that one.
Great. Jack Sullivan asks, what is the practical objective deliverable expected of Launchpad program participants? So
I think Paul already addressed some of that, but so thinking about just kind of going through the sessions, a clear idea of what your core enabling tech is, what it enables, who cares on the kind of tech road mapping side, getting a straightforward TEA calculation, a graphic of kind of how your process works, things like that. Just thinking about deliverables, but it's going to depend on the team, and it's something that we're still refining.
Great. So Lee Schneiberg asked something that might have been directed to XPRIZE, but might also have a Launchpad angle to it. If you see few teams developing the same air mining solution, maybe you see they're all needing to build up their teams. Are you going to consider being a matchmaker? I hope so, question mark.
Yeah, I can speak to that for a second. So the way that we're trying to make this as transparent as possible for teams that are looking for other team members. So when you sign up on our prize operations portal, that's kind of step one to joining the XPRIZE. You sign up, you create an account there, then you create your team. Once you've created your team, that profile will live inside of the prize operations platform, and you can search all of the other teams that are competing in the prize. There's a little banner that will appear on teams that say they're open to new members joining. So if you're someone interested in joining someone else's team, what I would suggest is kind of looking through the team profiles that exist and trying to see if anyone, is working on something that you're interested in and they're also looking for team members. You can contact them and try and meet up with them. I don't think that we on our side will proactively suggest that teams merge and collaborate, because it is still like a competition. And so teams that have created their own kind of profile and initiated their own entry into the competition, we try and let that be autonomous, and the team leader is deciding kind of the direction that they want to go. But if you're looking for other skill sets, you can, search through the platform and try and find teams that are open. If you really want XPRIZE to kind of, have an eye out for you, that's something, you can ask of us and we can try and look at that. But I don't think we would assume that teams that are working on similar solutions are necessarily looking to merge.
Great. So Francesca had another question. In terms of full team involvement, is that specific to the 1 hour weekly Launchpad meetings as well? What about cross time zone teams, including those for whom it'd be in the wee hours?
Yeah, I can kick that off, but I think Paul also has some good thoughts there. That is. So we realized that with this first Launchpad, we're doing it at noon Pacific Standard Time, which basically there's no one time zone that works for the entire planet. So we're working on that more for future batches down the road to make it more accessible. But just for this first one, we're just going to be doing it at noon PST time. But Paul, do you have any other comments in terms of how the full team should engage with Launchpad?
Yeah, look, and you and I haven't talked specifically. But we've talked about the possibility we might in future cohorts run, say, 2 parallel time zones, but for an early time and a late time or whatever from North American point of view. But I think in principle, with if there's a team that's really, really committed, right, then I've had teams in our creative destruction lab in Vancouver from Singapore. And once every 8 weeks for a year, they do come on for an hour at 2 in the morning because they recognize the value of this to try and build their venture. So, I guess I'm sympathetic, but, periodically I do 2 in the morning into Paris. And although that sounds a bit brutal, if it wasn't on a Zoom call, I'd be on a plane and my body would all be messed up. So I don't know. I would just say if you think this program's going to really help you, set your alarm.
Nice.
Okay. Oh yeah, a little bit of feedback from Lee about the matchmaking question. He was also thinking about Launchpad as well, about how Launchpad might. Lee, is that about right?
Oh, I get the question. I think that, AirMiners community is great for kind of making connections like that. And I think a lot of that probably will naturally happen within Launchpad, but I don't think it's something that we're, proactively trying to make happen or anything like that. I think it's ultimately be up to the teams to decide if they join forces or something like that. Also, Mike Leach is freaking rocking it in the chat with all the XPRIZE questions.
Yeah, please take a look at that for some excellent answers by Mike.
Keep them coming, guys. I'm doing my best.
Yeah, do you want to, Mike? Do you want to
best.
come up and make any comments or
yeah, please.
like that?
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Mike. I'm with Nikki on the XPRIZE team. I'm the technical manager for the prize. So if you guys have any questions about like scope and demonstration requirements and stuff like that, that's the kind of stuff that I can help you out with. But I would recommend you all download the guidelines and give those a read if you haven't already, because a lot of those questions are answered in that document. We've also, I'll just say, we've kind of formally closed the public comment period, but we are still interested in feedback from the community. And a really good place for you to hit us up is on the AirMiners Slack. We're going to be watching there. I'm in there, and my colleague Rupa Dandamudi is in there as well. And we can answer questions, beyond just now on Zoom.
Great.
Mike, do you want to just speak quickly to the kind of back and forth question in the chat about the demonstration scale size requirements so everyone understands that?
Yeah, so Mike Robinson and I were going back and forth a little bit on the demonstration requirements for the finals of the competition. Again, I really encourage you all to download the guidelines and give those a read, because the requirements are sort of quite specific in some ways and sort of intentionally vague in other ways. So there's a lot of nuance in there, and we'd really like you to read those and kind of like, interpret them as you will. But the requirements are, the demonstration requirement is to demonstrate a CDR solution at 1,000 tons per year. And I apologize, I made a mistake earlier. Somebody was asking about megaton, and I was like, oh yeah, it's a megaton a year. That was just a mistake. 1,000 tons per year is the demonstration requirement. We have not specifically, we haven't specifically, that works out to 2-point-something tons per day if you're doing it every day. We're not requiring a specific daily rate, okay? You guys, there's room for interpretation, and what we want to see is technologies that are capable of removing at least 1,000 tons per year. That's also a floor. You can go bigger. No need to take your foot off the gas pedal if that's where you're going. There's also a requirement to submit a technical model which demonstrate the cost of your technology at a megaton per year, as well as sustainability to a gigaton and beyond. So again, I think this was in Nikki's presentation, but also take a look at the guidelines, because we go into that in a great amount of detail. So the answer to the 1,000 tons per year question is there's room for you guys to kind of interpret and schedule your project in many different ways, run different strategies for sequestering carbon. That's one reason for that, for example, is some CDR technologies are seasonal. And so asking for a requirement for like day over day continuous operations isn't feasible in that case. So there's kind of a method to the madness here, but intentional room for interpretation. I hope that makes sense.
Question actually following up to Michael, you and Nikki from Declan Cross. Can the solution to draw down 1,000 tons a year at year 4 be a modular solution, a number of plants across the globe to total 1,000 tons? By the way, hello from Ireland, he says.
Yeah, hello from Los Angeles. I love that we can get together digitally and hash this stuff out. I think the answer is yes, but it also depends. There's a couple of issues there. First of all, there's a question of like the logistics of verifying your technology, and so we're kind of getting into the future here. But we have to have the ability to verify your technology, and that just means we can't go and visit 1,000 sites all spread out over the globe. So we have not prohibited distributed solutions or modular solutions, but I think that there's like a practical reality that we have to consider as well. So so I think that's a really great question. I would encourage you to register a team and compete and see where you get over the next few years, and we'll kind of have to figure that out.
Thanks. I just pushed in the chat. We have about 3 minutes left, and I want to be respectful of everybody's very busy schedules. So we have time for maybe one last question about Launchpad. So a question from Lasse to the XPRIZE about an acceptable time horizon for permanence for a biochar solution. And Rohit asked, the carbon doesn't have to be buried, right? It can be processed. This,
yeah, the answers to Rohit is yes, the carbon doesn't have to be buried. We're looking for sequestration that has a durability of 100 years or more. And again, take a look at the guidelines because we explore this in a little bit more detail. Durability of 100 years doesn't mean permanent for millennia. It means show us a strategy for managing the carbon store in such a way that the carbon is not going to be re-released in 100 years. Again, there's like lots of ways to interpret that, and that's by design.
Okay, great. So we're at 12:59 Pacific right now. Why don't we thank you everyone for all your excellent questions. Tito, and I think you have some links to share, maybe the link for the application itself to the Launchpad.
Yeah, I'll post that right now.
Great.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Nice chatting with you, Nikki and Paul. Thank you for wisdom and perspective as always.
Yes, thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Paul. Excellent.
And Mike as well.
Thank you. Team effort. Okay, wonderful. Thanks, everyone. Look forward to seeing your applications.